All right, we're ready.
Oh, let's ready to rumble.
Your microphone was on the whole time. Hopefully you didn't say anything bad. I think you were cursing.
You're kidding.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
The views expressed by Ben Joravsky are not those of the Ben Joravsky Show.
And when we say crack, we're talking about the downloads on the website, all right? Sorry, guys. I didn't know the microphones were on.
Yeah,
all
good job, D.
Oh, goodness. All right. It's our last day here at Sun Times. Seriously, we weren't talking about crack the drug. Okay.
Good job.
The Ben Joravsky Show for your Wednesday, June 5th is just moments away. But before we get into that, we would like to thank the following unions for bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. Actually, Ben, before we go here, just tell me who's on the show real quick. I didn't write it down.
Oh,
breaking the fourth wall today.
Monroe Anderson,
right.
Jim Coogan, and Kina Collins. Monroe Anderson,
I know who that is. All
midweek
right.
with Monroe.
Coogan, I know who that is. Tell me,
Kina Collins running for Congress in the 7th Congressional District. Yesterday we had Anthony Clark on.
Oh, boy. I bet Anthony's not happy with this.
No, come on. Anthony understands how the game is played.
7th Congressional District candidate, right?
Yes, indeed. Want to know who's on tomorrow?
We'll wait for tomorrow.
Okay, I got the book right here.
All right, now we'll wait for that.
Remember, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them.
Oh, wow. Quoting Kenny Rogers. It's going to be a fantastic Wednesday, people. All right, your Ben Joravsky Show for Wednesday, June 5th is just moments away. But before we get into that, we would like to thank the following unions for bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. First up, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 in District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. A giant thank you to those unions for jumping on board and bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. And, of course, today's program is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. It is Wednesday, June 5th. And live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, legendary journalist Monroe Anderson returns. We welcome back the ace attorney himself, the one and only Jim Coogan of Dwyer & Coogan. And it's the Ben Joravsky Show debut of 7th Congressional District candidate, Kina Collins. And now your host, not a candidate. Look at those dance moves. You wouldn't elect him. Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Yeah, hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Cynical Wednesday. And here's why. Woke up this morning, D, to a double whammy of bad news. Whammy number one. Oh, God.
Let's hear that bad news.
Voters in L.A. defeated a referendum to raise property taxes to fund their public schools. Public schools need money. Don't get the money. Bad news number one. Bad news number two. Well, it's not really bad news, but it was a brilliant column by Phil Cadner in today's Bright One. There's the Sun-Times. Home delivered. In the middle of a storm. Okay, it was good news. You got to give the delivery person a lot of credit. Were you up last night at 4:30 in the morning?
No, I was not.
It's not last night. Were you up at 4:30 in the morning?
No, I was not.
Guess who was?
Not surprised.
Reading a very long New Yorker article about Beto O'Rourke. I read it, folks, so you don't have to read it. You're welcome. Okay, now I know everything about. Give me a question about Beto O'Rourke.
What's his middle name?
Billy Bob.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it was that.
I just made that up. Anyway, okay, I don't know his middle name, but I believe he has a middle name. That's a good question, by the way. Very good question. Where was I? Oh, yes. The paper arrived at 4:30, and I read Phil Cadner's column. I urge everybody to read it. Illinois keeps relying on failed trickle-down theory of government spending. Anyway, the reason I say that's bad news is because it's connected to the bad news in L.A. I will now explain. First, L.A., as near as I could tell from reading the articles that have appeared on my phone, voters in L.A. voted no on raising property taxes to fund public schools because they were convinced by a well-funded opposition campaign waged by the local business community, in particular the Chamber of Commerce. I cannot, however, completely blame the Chamber of Commerce for the vote, as much as I'd like to, by the way. Voters are very skeptical that the money they pay in their taxes will go to the things they want to fund with their tax dollars. So if you ask them to voluntarily raise their taxes, to dig into their pockets and pay more for government, they're liable to say no, because I don't believe you're going to spend the money fairly, accurately, efficiently, etc., and so forth. And so I have to tell you, folks, I can relate. Having lived in Chicago for the last 40 years, I watch my property taxes each year, go up, 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 and yet public schools, which I put at the top of the list for what I want my taxes to go to, are always near broke. So how can that be? You know how that can be? The money's not going where it's supposed to. And that brings me to Phil Cadner's excellent, and I mean excellent column. It's kind of like Phil Cadner's been covering politics for a long time, just as I have, and so he's just a little jaded as he approaches it, but he does it with this tad of a sense of humor. Let's start off with the column. Illinois is a strange place to live. Baseball teams deliberately lose games and their fans enthusiastically support their strategy. Elected officials get indicted by federal grand juries but get reelected. The state, as a financial strategy, fails to make its pension payments, generates billions of dollars in debt, and then passes tax hikes so it can spend more money. People who don't live here don't understand it. Heck, people who do live here can't explain it. Oh, yes, indeed. Wait, he's got more. We need the state to come up with money for public education. Because the state has failed to adequately support public schools, property taxes are among the highest in the nation. We need to repair roads and bridges and spend more on public transportation. We have to do something to address the growing pension debt. But I understand why so many people in this state are angry. Nationally, Republicans talk about the trickle-down theory of economics, which basically contends that if the richest folks in this country make more money, some of that will trickle down to the working class people. In Illinois, the Democratic Party theory seems to be if you give politicians more money, some of it will eventually trickle down to the government programs that actually benefit taxpayers. Here, trickle down Democratic policies. Give the government more of your money and hope, please, God, oh please, that some of it gets to where you want it to go, like schools. Meanwhile, Sun-Times and Tribune are filled with stories about Alderman Ed Burke pleading not guilty, I should say, to charges of having shaken down developers seeking TIF handouts. Speaking of property tax dollars that gets thrown out the window, it doesn't go anywhere where anybody wants it to go. I could think of few things that have more undercut the credibility of our political system than the actions of Ed Burke, who's been the finance chair in the city council since the 90s, served there under Richard Daley, served there under Rahm Emanuel. He used his position of power to shake down and extort and approve tax hikes that just undercut our belief in the system. Here's the irony. For years, he was supported in his campaigns by some of the same leading citizens of Chicago, who are the counterparts, I should say, of the folks in L.A. who undercut the referendum to raise taxes for the school. As bad as things are in Chicago and in L.A., obviously the system works just fine for the powerful. We got a great show today, everybody. Monroe Anderson will be here at 1:30 talking. You know what he's going to be talking?
Gardening.
No, that's
automotive.
Mike Novak. He's not going to be here
Sports.
today. Trump,
golf,
and more Trump.
Oh.
But I may, throw a local issue at him and one or two of those. And Jim Coogan will be here at 2:00. Speaking of Trump, that's our ace attorney, knows more about the legal issues. He's been away. We've been missing very big
we miss you, Jim.
court case. He's just recently settled, or he just won, I should say, jury verdict. So he'll be in to talk more Trump. And Kina Collins will be in here as well. She's running for Congress in the 7th Congressional District. We had Anthony Clark yesterday. Got Kina Collins in here today. We're going to reach out to Danny K. Davis, bring him in as well. Come on. It's political time. Campaigns are heating up. All right, D? All right, we got to get knowledgeable.
Okay.
All right.
Quit yelling.
You got to study your issues.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Okay.
I will.
Do 10 push-ups.
Oh, my.
All right, so after he does his 10 push-ups, he's going to give us the national news.
8, 9.
Oh boy!
10.
Oh my God! Yeah, you know what?
Love push-ups.
You're as in good shape as Andy Ruiz, who's now the heavyweight champion.
Okay, that was an insult. That's a big feller there. All right, people, it's the middle of a beautiful day here in Chicago, Illinois. Let's begin by unpacking the national news happening this afternoon. And Ben, don't unpack your suitcase just yet, all right? It's day 3 of our president's visit to the United Kingdom. Let's do what we did yesterday. Let's hop over across the pond again. Let's find out what's going on, huh?
I love that airplane.
All right, we're in the UK again.
Oh yeah,
Fast traveling.
That's a fast airplane, man.
All right, and don't worry, everyone. This is the final day of Donald Trump's visit, so the airplane bit will be done after today's show.
Oh
okay?
no, I
There
like
we
the airplane bit.
President Trump joined world leaders today to commemorate the 75th anniversary of D-Day in Portsmouth on the final day of his visit. Trump and Queen Elizabeth greeted D-Day veterans after the ceremony, hearing their stories and thanking them for their service. Trump also had a brief private chat with German Chancellor Angela Merkel.
Oh, remember he was insulting her a little while ago? Now they made up, huh?
That's how it rolls.
You know that song, Make Up to Break Up? Want me to sing it?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. Trump then boarded Air Force One to fly to Ireland. Yeah, okay. I guess
Who's he going to insult over there?
I don't know, but I guess we're
Bono?
going to, I don't know. We're going to Ireland though. Let's
Okay.
figure it out, everybody. Come on, Ben. All right.
What's that? Wait, that's...
It's the Ireland
the
national anthem.
Okay.
Oh, big Ireland fan this guy is. Ben, put the booze down. We're here on assignment in Ireland now. Come on.
It's kind of early to be drinking anyway.
Yeah, so says you.
But I'll be drinking tonight watching that big ball game.
All right, we're in Ireland.
All right.
During his visit to Ireland, Donald Trump plans to visit the tiny village of Doonbeg, which, by the way, is adjacent to his golf course and
God.
resort.
That's right. He's got golf courses in Scotland, Ireland.
Now I'm looking around here because remember, guys, we're in Ireland right now. Hear the music? That's Ireland.
Okay.
I'm looking around here and nope, I do not see as many protests as we did in the UK.
Isn't that interesting?
That's because many locals in Doonbeg are actually fans of Trump. They consider his business an economic lifeline.
Really? Where'd you read that?
In the news, Ben.
Breitbart? That sounds like some Breitbart stuff. I know his golf course has been really controversial in Scotland, so I didn't know he was so loved in Ireland.
They love him in Ireland. And what a multitasker this guy is, because while doing all of this traveling and commemorating, our president still found time to troll people like a psychopath.
Yeah.
And we knew you wouldn't let us down, Donald. So let's, you see, back in the States here, people. Oh, wait, we got to go back to the United States. Hold on.
Oh, well, we're back. Is he back already?
No, we're back.
Oh, I see.
In the
We're
United
back.
States. Get with it.
Okay. I liked Ireland. I was going to, stop into a pub.
Here in the States.
Get
Yeah, I
some
know. I
Guinness.
said don't drink.
Oh, okay.
We're on assignment.
Get ready for that big game tonight.
Okay, he loves the game tonight. Here in the States, Donald Trump is facing a bit of revolt from Senate Republicans over his plan to put tariffs on Mexican goods.
We'll be talking to Monroe about this.
On Tuesday, about a half a dozen GOP senators stood to speak about why tariffs are a bad idea. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer predicted Trump would not follow through with the 5% tariff, and since it probably wouldn't be on his best in his best interest to trash the GOP, he decided to just troll Schumer instead. I do. I have Donald Trump's
funny.
I have Donald Trump's Twitter page open in my browser. Just let me click on it
Okay.
here. 1 second. Okay. We're now on Donald Trump's Twitter
I haven't heard
page.
this one in a while. What happened to the ukulele?
Bringing it back, baby.
Okay.
All right, here's the tweet from Donald Trump.
Can you imagine crying Chuck Schumer saying out loud for all to hear that I am bluffing with respect to putting tariffs on Mexico? What a creep.
What a creep? He said, what a creep.
That's what I said. He would rather have our country
What a
fail with
creep.
drugs and immigration than give Republicans a win. But he gave Mexico bad advice. No bluff.
Yeah. All right, folks. Listen, at one level, this is very entertaining, and it raises the question, is Donald Trump out of his mind? He certainly is not behaving like any president we've ever seen before, so maybe the other presidents were out of their mind. This is a question. I'm going to put this one to Monroe Anderson when he comes in, but to put out a tweet that the Democratic leader in the Senate is a creep. Interesting choice of words from our president of the United States. And let's face it, folks, you know it as well as I do. There has not been any long-term analytical strategic thought about trade policy. This is just something that has just popped up out of Donald Trump's mind. Everybody in the White House is scrambling to come up with something vaguely logical to defend it and explain why people in this country should be socked by the consequences of a trade war. Like, what isn't for us long term? Why is this a good idea? He's using trade first in China, just sort of in the general sense to exploit the notion that somehow China has had an unfair advantage over us over the years, without any study, any analysis. And now all of a sudden he's throwing at Mexico to use tariffs as a tool to hammer Mexico over immigration, to make it seem as though he's doing something for a problem that he largely inflated in order to get elected president because he can't get his wall built. So it's as though Donald Trump is just making the stuff up as he goes along, D. And so Schumer called him out on him, and he responded by calling him a creep. That's our president, D.
Oh, and remember yesterday he called the mayor of London a stone-cold loser.
Yeah, there we go. Is he deranged? Has the bar fallen? No, that's normal behavior.
After that, on Twitter, he quoted a statement of support from House Minority Leader and resident Trump rump kisser Kevin McCarthy. And he couldn't resist this here. Trump then weighed in on the allegations that 2020 candidate and former Vice President Grandpa Joe Biden's campaign plagiarized parts of his climate change plan, but predicted the, quote, corrupt media will save him. And yes, in the tweet, he called him Sleepy Joe.
Okay. We're going to be talking about that with Monroe as well, the plagiarism complaint about Joe. Joe Biden has some issues with plagiarism. 1988, of course, this is way before you were even born, D, was it? Or you were a baby back then. Most of the millennials don't even know what I'm talking about. 1988, the year was. The Chicago Bulls
5
were
years
in the
old.
playoffs against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Huh? Did you know that? Huh?
Yeah, Michael Jordan made that shot.
No, that was 89.
No.
In 88, it went to 5. They didn't need the incredible shot to win it. But anyway, I digress.
That's our sports talk for the day. Hope you had fun.
Anyway, 1998 campaign was Joe Biden's campaign ended with plagiarism charges. My sense of it is that the bar is so low. Things have devolved so much in politics where, the president survived the tape of him talking about grabbing women by their private parts, lawsuits with strippers, affairs with strippers when his wife had recently given birth. So we've descended to a new low in national politics. I have a feeling that somehow or other the plagiarism accusations will not in and of themselves derail Biden's campaign.
And speaking of our 2020 Democratic presidential candidates, a few of them have unveiled some presidential plans. And hey, here's something different, Ben. The candidates aren't Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. Yeah, and it seems like, they come up with actual ideas here. And hey, bonus points, Democratic presidential candidates, they don't involve mainly Donald Trump. So double bonus here.
Wow.
Orange man bad, I believe, is what the conservatives call it. Yes, we're starting to get some.
What do they call it?
Orange man bad.
Oh, okay. Well, it sort of sums it all up.
Yeah, we're starting to see some substance here in the POTUS race. Ben Joravsky. First up, Senator/candidate Kirsten Gillibrand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she may have been reading the Illinois news lately. Gillibrand has unveiled a proposal to legalize marijuana nationwide. She vows to immediately deschedule marijuana as a federal controlled substance, expunge all nonviolent marijuana convictions at the federal level, and establish a national process to make marijuana production and consumption clean, safe, and sustainable.
Hear, hear. I'm all for it. About time. The war on drugs was a complete failure, a waste of money, a waste of time. Let's just move on.
Washington Governor Jay Inslee, a.k.a. the climate change guy, had released another climate change plan today. This is now the third proposal to tackle the issue from his presidential campaign. This plan focuses on restoring the United States' international climate leadership. It calls for rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement and then holding bilateral negotiations with major economic powers to develop more ambitious targets than the ones in the original agreement.
Hear, hear. I'm all for that as well. We cannot regress. We can't retreat on the fight to save our planet. It's only saving our planet, right, D? So good for him.
Up next, Democratic presidential hopeful and candidate who may own the most skateboards. It could be a tie between him and Bernie Sanders. I'm not sure. We haven't checked. Beto O'Rourke. He unveiled a sweeping voting rights-based policy plan Tuesday night that promises to ban PAC money from political campaigns, impose term limits on elected officials and Supreme Court justices, and increase voter registration by 50 million by 2024.
Wow. Term limits on Supreme Court justices. Our good friend David Ferris has been talking about that for a long time. I actually think there's a lot of merit in that. it's become the Supreme Court has become such a political game. And the notion of lifetime service. So if your party wins, quote unquote wins, because Donald Trump didn't even win the popular vote. If your party wins, then you get to select a Supreme Court justice, and that serves for years and years, far beyond that limited 4 or 8 year term that you have served as president. So I do believe that it's time we reconsider lifetime service on the Supreme Court, lifetime terms on the Supreme Court. Maybe there should be limited term. I think Ferris is onto something.
Beto O'Rourke's plan is made up of 3 parts.
Number 1.
Okay. Increase participation within our democracy.
Number 2.
Remove barriers within our democracy. And finally,
Number 3.
Rebuild confidence in our democracy.
All right. Well, I can, as a general principles, I can, it's hard to argue with any of those 3 things. You get the truth is in the pudding, in the particulars of it. By the way, this long article I read. Did I tell you I read a really long article about Beto O'Rourke?
It went bragging about it all day.
Well, I don't know about bragging, more like complaining. Anyway, I did read the article. Okay, I read the article, and one of the interesting things is that Beto O'Rourke, he's a young man. He's 46, I want to say, but he's already evolved. The politicians evolve a lot younger these days. And when he started out in his earliest days in El Paso, he was sort of like a gentrifier, if you follow me on this one, D. So imagine a young Beto O'Rourke in Logan Square on the north side of Chicago, helping to pass legislation, local planning initiatives that speed up gentrification and move working class and poor people out. Interesting that he's evolved from those days. So now he's talking about democracy and how important it is that everybody get involved. And I'm always a little skeptical about these young candidates who come in out of nowhere and they want to be president before what? Well, he was 3-term congressman, so. Anyway.
And finally, the candidate who seems to be literally no one's pick for president. I wonder why. New Jersey Senator Cory Big Pharma Booker. He proposed a new housing plan today, calling for a new tax credit for renters. Under the proposal, anyone paying more than 30% of their income on rent would be eligible for a refundable tax credit. The tax credit would cover the difference between 30% of the person's income and their rent, capped at the federally determined fair market rent for their neighborhood. An estimated 57 million people could benefit from the credit, with the average family getting $4,800 a year. Booker is also proposing requiring cities and towns that want certain federal transportation and housing grants to eliminate restrictive zoning rules in order to make it easier to build affordable housing.
Yeah, well, this is all about building affordable housing. And if you give a tax credit to renters, you're effectively subsidizing the rent that their landlords charge. So effectively, you're giving more money to the landlords, if you think about it that way, because you're entering a marketplace that enables them to charge a lot in rent that working class people can afford. So I gotta think about this one for a while, D, before I decide how much I'm jumping aboard it. But it's clear. I was just reading a story today in the paper about the affordable housing crisis in L.A., the homeless situation throughout California, and even here in Chicago. Our real estate markets are far too expensive for so many of the people to afford. So what are we just going to force people to just keep moving away from cities, constantly force relocation out of gentrifying areas? I don't know if that's the free market approach. But maybe we have to sort of intercede in the free market and try to protect the interests of working class people.
Now, of course, we will keep you posted on these stories as today's program rolls along. People, we're moving on. And after this short little break, we're going to find out what's going on locally here in Chicago and Illinois. We are going to find out what else is news. Don't go anywhere. The Ben Joravsky Show will be right back.
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. Chicagoland Cremation Options.com. One more time. Chicagoland Cremation Options.com.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit AdmiralX.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
Hey, playing now at Steppenwolf Theater, the world premiere of Ms. Black for President. It's inspired by the true, that's true as in it really happened, TRUE story of Joan Jett Black, America's first drag queen presidential candidate. You know who created it, D?
No.
It was created by Tony nominee Tina Landau.
Oh.
And you know who else created it?
No.
Oscar winner Terrell Alvin McCraney. You know him, Moonlight.
Oh, yeah.
For tickets, visit steppenwolf.org. That's Steppenwolf, like the rock group from the 60s.
Hang tight, millennials. Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Oh, I love this. Where do you get this great music, man?
I don't know.
Man, it fires me up. All right, what you got for me, young man? I know you're going to do the deep dive in the local news.
All right, everybody, we're about to find out what's going on locally. It's time for What Else is News. And with all that's been going on lately in Illinois and all this good legislation being passed, somewhat of a much-needed slow news day locally in Chicago and Illinois. So, Ben, what do you say with the time we have left? Why don't we poke fun at the Chicago Tribune, huh?
Always a fun thing to do in the Ben
Always
Joravsky.
a good way to kill time here on the Ben Joravsky
Let me just
Show.
say something, though. I subscribe to the Chicago Tribune. I may make fun of it from time to time, but I subscribe to it, all right, D? I support it. Okay?
I don't, but
Okay.
Tribune jokes coming your way in a moment. But
Okay.
first,
After years of neglect, Illinois is finally getting its mojo back, and we're open for business.
you know, typically I'd say you're full of it, but Governor Pritzker, you may be right. The Big Feller's Illinois rehab tour continues. Today, our Democratic Illinois Governor, J.B. Pritzker, is in Chicago. Pritzker will be visiting the Thompson Center to sign the state budget and fair tax legislation. This is going to be happening at 3:15 this afternoon. Ben Joravsky, how are we feeling about J.B. Pritzker these
I'm
days?
liking JB. All right, Terry Cosgrove's listening. All right, Terry, you were right and I was wrong. Remember he said you have to put your big boy pants on and support a billionaire for governor. I'll tell you what, one little example that some people have told me about when he dug into his pockets and put that big party together where P-Funk was there, George Clinton. I don't
You
know
weren't
if it was-
invited?
Yeah, I was not.
I remember that, yeah.
Okay, so other people told me not only was George Clinton there, but they had quite an array of outstanding liquors and whiskeys, etc. People were having a good old time. I'm sure the reporting crew was like, yeah, woo. The point is, it just loosened everybody up. Everyone was happy. They were cutting deals. It's just like, he found a way just to be so likable, maybe throwing a party. And I'm like, in the abstract, we shouldn't have to have parties and George Clinton concerts to do the right thing, but apparently that's where we are, D. So that's just one example of where having a billionaire as governor sort of comes in handy.
So, hey, Governor Pritzker, if you're listening to this at the moment, next time you bring an awesome band like P-Funk into town, invite this guy, would you? Earth, Wind, and Fire, maybe they're coming. Invite Ben.
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
All right, now to picking on the Tribune editorial board here. Recreational marijuana legalization is coming to Illinois in January 2020. Yes, it's true. And believe it or not, this is leaving a few of our Illinois friends of the conservative persuasion at a loss for words.
A little confused they are.
But luckily for us here on the Ben Joravsky Show, that is not the case with our centrist to conservative-leaning friends over at the Chicago Tribune and their editorial board. They have words about reefer legalization, and they're pretty hilarious.
Okay. Wait, before you take the deep dive, can I just say something nice about the Tribune?
Okay.
All right. I've been making fun of the Tribune for their headlines, all right? And talking about how clever the Sun-Times. Remember Cockadoodle?
Don't.
Do I still want me to show that? Anyway, Cockadoodle don't.
All right, well, you're gonna talk about the headline for this article.
Yeah,
We're
okay.
getting there, bud. We're getting there. Jumping ahead with recreational.
Sorry about that.
Recreational marijuana on the way. I had to throw my bench.
What a catch by Leah.
With recreational marijuana on the way in 2020, the Chicago Tribune has weighed in with their thoughts on recreational marijuana. And Ben, the Trib is so hip. Don't believe me? Just listen to the headline of this column.
Okay.
Recreational marijuana.
Yeah.
Illinois embarks on a long, strange trip. Whoa. Now, Ben, you were just mentioning it here. I know you love these headlines in the paper. I mean, this headline from the Tribune is no cockadoodle don't. But before we move on and read some of this article, Ben Joravsky, on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best, please rate the headline, recreational marijuana, Illinois embarks on a long, strange trip.
I'm sorry. That's not the headline I had in mind. I was going to give him a shout out for. That's a 2. I mean, it's a cliche. By the way, for 10 trivia points, do you know where they got that headline?
Grateful Dead.
What song?
Truckin'.
Whoa! Dang, man. How'd you know that? Let's sing it.
My mom's a hippie.
Trucking, got my chips cashed in. Anyway, the point is that line has been used so many times, and the reality is that marijuana is not this foreign alien thing that conservatives pretend it is to justify their war on drugs that they've been waging or forcing the country to wage since the 60s or 70s. Most people, I would say, in Chicago have smoked marijuana. I bet you, D, right now in corporate boardrooms at the Tribune headquarters, there are people who smoked marijuana last night. How about that, D?
Maybe even on their lunch break.
But people pretend like, oh, it's such a weird thing. It's such an outer dimension. It's a long, strange trip. So I don't know, man. I think it just sort of underscores the problem with the opposition to marijuana in the first place.
So what number did you give it?
I was being nice. I'm really feeling the Tribune today. I'm going to give it 2.
2.
Okay. And 5 is the best. 1 is the absolute worst. Or 0 is the absolute. Remember I used to give Ronner -10? Hey, Tribune, you're better than Ronner.
All right, so let's read a little bit of this.
Of course, they supported Ronner. Oh, God.
All right, let's read a little bit of this article here. You riff on it, and we'll end the segment. How's that sound?
Wait, can I just give him a shout-out for this one headline?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Come on. I give him grief, all right? And I always talk about how great the Sun-Times headlines are, and the Sun-Times. But in this case, I think, I got to say, the Tribune's casino headline is better than the bright ones.
Okay.
All right, so here's the bright ones.
Headline wars.
Okay. Southeast Side Alderman wants casino entertainment near Lake Calumet. Our good friend Alderman Susan Sadlowski Garza wants this casino down there. So Southeast Side Alderman wants casino entertainment near Lake Calumet. That's heading into snoozer country, if you ask me. But here,
Dude, I just fell asleep.
The Tribunal, got to give him credit, man. Casinos cite a dicey dilemma. Whoa, Tribune living
Take back
in the
everything I said. Everything I said, I take it back.
Tribune's living in that fast lane, man.
Holy cow. Slow down, Trib.
It's no cockadoodle don't, but it's on the path. Come on, let's show. Where's the cockadoodle don't?
Oh, yeah. Show them that 3-week-old article, please. Please. We got to see that.
Did someone clean out my editorial?
Oh, no. Someone picked up after you. All right. Hey, this is not good podcasting. You looking for papers.
Here we go. Hey, Monroe.
Oh, perfect. Just, we're not doing a podcast.
Cockadoodle don't, all right? That's a headline.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Cockadoodle
Okay. And for the love of God, let's read this and end this segment.
Okay.
The article reads, bringing recreational marijuana to Illinois means that an illicit drug will become legal for adults. Okay. If you're old enough to have been a hippie, your mind is blown, we imagine.
Oh, my mind is blown. Here we go.
Hey, it's freaky for younger generations, too.
Get it, freaky?
No.
Freaky Friday. Good movie, by the way.
Hey, it's freaky for younger generations too, but probably a source of pain to any pot smoker who faced prosecution for what soon will be condoned as a lifestyle choice. Presuming that Governor J.B. Pritzker signs the bill delivered to him by the General Assembly, Illinois will become the 11th state to welcome weed. The legal ramifications are profound, but the culture change also feels significant, partly because drug use is a divisive issue. Many people in Illinois will celebrate their first legal highs. Others will be wary of what's to come.
God, please stop. No, right now, most polls I see show like, what, 68%, 70% of people in Illinois want it legalized. Reefer smoking hasn't really been a divisive issue since the 60s. I got Monroe Anderson in the studio. This guy knows a thing or two about marijuana smoking. And
read all about it.
I mean, this notion, again, this notion. And by the way, they totally ducked the main issue about about marijuana being illegal. There was a huge racial divide. Black people got locked up for smoking reefer by and large, not white people. It's been legal for white people for like 30 years. You understand? So it's not like something new. White people go around smoking marijuana all the time, Monroe Anderson.
Yes, as a matter of, I've written columns about this over the years.
Yes.
And the way marijuana became illegal was, I forget his name, but this was back in the 1930s when J. Edgar Hoover was getting all the press for busting booze places, speakeasies, things of that nature. So there was this guy in the department who was jealous of Hoover, so he lobbied to make marijuana illegal. It wasn't even illegal until then. And it was an easy move on his behalf because only Mexicans and jazz musicians, black jazz musicians, smoked it.
Yeah, Louis Armstrong. Big smoker of marijuana.
Yeah, right. Everybody. Yeah, exactly.
And but the notion
reefer madness.
Yeah. But anyway, the notion that this is such a huge divisive issue and folks are going to have to really wrestle with this one is so exaggerated. Anyway, D, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
So there you are. Just like that, you're now in the know of what's going on in Illinois, and now you will have an answer the next time someone asks you, hey, what else is news? Wait, J.B. Pritzker wants to weigh in.
I'm J.B. Pritzker, and I'm not a perfect person.
All right. Anyway, I'm going to tell you something, D. Something that Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead.
Really?
And something that Merrill Haggard, we don't smoke pot and Muskogee fame, although he ended up smoking reefer big time. And something that Snoop Dogg, all agree. Snoop Dogg loves reefer. You did a great job. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. We got Monroe sitting here. We're going to be talking Trump when we return.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Hey, everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffmanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Benny J, take it away.
All right, Monroe Anderson with me as he is every Wednesday. Monroe Anderson, Monroe Midweek, we call it here at the Ben Joravsky Show. And Monroe always puts on his Facebook page essentially a cheat sheet that we're supposed to follow, topics we're supposed to cover. And one week to another, we never get through like half of them because I have so many tangents. Since you wrote this, there's like 3 things I want to ask you about.
Well, and also Trump always intervenes.
Yes, because in the time between we had the conversation to set up the cheat sheet this morning and the time it took you to get to the studio, Trump did about 3 stupid things that I want to talk to you about. But one thing I want to talk to you about, and I'm going to talk about reefer right now. We're going to put reefer to the side. And
okay, let me take one more toke.
Oh, okay. Monroe Anderson. That Monroe Anderson. That's a Tribune. But by the way, Monroe Anderson used to work for the Tribune, Did you know that?
No.
Yeah.
And
I don't know how that's happened.
And to spice it up even more, I worked at Newsweek with John, God, I forgot his last name, the head of the Tribune board.
Cass.
No, not John. You mean Bruce Dole?
No, Bruce is the editor. Now.
Okay.
Bruce was the.
Well, let's look it up. Hold on, I got the Tribunal right here.
By the way, Monroe, can you get us an interview with John Cass?
He got him his job, didn't he, or something like that?
He's not great.
I don't know.
Oh, this is great.
Jonathan Berlin? I have no idea. Oh, McCormick.
McCormick.
Oh, that guy. Yeah,
John McCormick.
Yeah.
Fantastic content.
I
Ben reads the paper.
Right, exactly. I worked with him for 3 years.
Oh, my God. All right. Well, I'm sure you have the scars.
He probably wrote it himself. And he wasn't smoking any.
He wasn't smoking anywhere. Okay. But he was surprised by it. He didn't realize that marijuana, they never told me that so many people smoke marijuana.
John is from Iowa.
Well, people smoke marijuana in Iowa, for goodness sake. I could tell you that for a fact, all right? People smoke it downstate. People smoke it all over the place, and we act like it's some foreign thing. All right, enough marijuana talk. I have to ask you this.
Yep.
Do you have any marijuana on you?
Only medical.
Okay.
You can't have it.
Okay.
You're not sick.
All right. So I have a confession to make here, Monroe. Many of my friends of the journalistic persuasion have been telling me lately that I'm too unfair to Trump. Okay? They say I'm too unfair to a lot of powerful politicians. I was unfair to Rahm. I was unfair to Daley. A lot of them have been telling me.
You're asking the wrong person.
I just need to ask, okay, you've been around the political block of a few years. Yeah. And so I put these questions to people come on this show. And one of the questions I put to people, having spent a lot of time reading about the Nixon years, I'm obsessed with the Nixon years, is this question I have is, who is more deranged, Nixon or Trump? Now, I just assume there's no bias embedded in my sentence and my question, because I assume that any logical human being would look at the things that Nixon did and look at the things that Trump did and come to the conclusion that they're deranged, like crazy. They're not acting rational. All right. Whoa. What was
Just keep
that?
going, dude.
Okay.
Anyway, but my friends of the journalistic persuasion are telling me, Ben, there's a lot of assumptions embedded in your use of the word deranged that show a bias against Donald John Trump and Richard Milhouse Nixon. Now, they're not as concerned about Richard Milhouse Nixon because he's been dead for, 30 years or whatever it's been.
Right.
So, all right, I'm asking you right now, do you think it's unfair to use the word deranged in relation to Donald Trump?
No.
Yeah, I just had to ask the question.
Because he is deranged.
Explain what you mean by
as
that.
you know, I've been on your show almost every week.
Right, for over 2 years.
For over 2 years. And one of the things I've been guessing, because I'm not a doctor, but is that he suffers from either dementia and or early
All right, so you actually think that there's a medical reason for his behavior.
Yeah, right, exactly. I think he's nuts.
Okay. All right, well.
Clinically.
Yeah, you're definitely not a doctor.
Right, not as a person. Well, what? When I was at that other station one time.
Oh,
I was guest hosting for Dick Kay.
The great Dick Kay.
Yeah. And I had this Northwestern psychiatrist on who had written an article for Atlantic. Mm-hmm. And his theory, and this is Trump wasn't president, he was just a candidate at the time, and he said that he was had severe narcissism, but he went through some other things. And of course, his opinion didn't count 100% because he hadn't sat down face to face and analyzed them. But he went through all the points to be made that underscore he's crazy.
He's crazy. Well, I never thought about it in terms of sort of a clinical or medical explanation the way you just did.
Yeah.
The way you just articulated. I always just viewed it, I'm looking at his behavior.
Right.
I'm looking at his tweets.
Right.
Like today, for instance, we've already run through a few of his tweets. I don't know if you've seen them, where he called Chuck Schumer a creep. What a creep.
Yeah.
Where yesterday he called the mayor of London a stone cold loser.
Yeah.
These are tweets from the president of the United States.
Right.
I don't think this is normal behavior. I think this is abnormal behavior. And so I believe that journalists who pretend as though this is normal behavior are sort of contributing
This
to...
is why we have Trump in the White House.
Explain
right now.
that, please.
Okay. The man has been lying and saying crazy things and doing crazy things since he first rode down the escalator. For example, a crowd that welcomed his candidacy had been paid off. He paid people to come there and do this. Okay, which was unscrupulous, but not.
You're talking about when he first announced.
Yes, when he first announced.
I did not know that. I did not read that. He paid people to show up.
Yeah,
that's
I think it was $50 each or something.
Where did he find? Who were these people? Do you know?
Michael Cohen probably got them for him.
Cohen.
I don't know for sure. I mean, I didn't see that in the article.
Yeah.
But I saw that he had paid off the audience.
Okay.
And it wasn't very large. It was because he's cheap.
Okay. He didn't need that big an audience.
He's cheap and crazy.
By the way, just in the middle of this, I got to tell you that we have a history of that here in Chicago. Mayor Rahm, his political backers were paying protesters, I don't know if you know this, to come to meetings to endorse Mayor Rahm's school closing policies. This is in 2012. So we have a bit of a history of that in Chicago. We're pretty real crazy here in Chicago as well. But anyway, go back to your recitation.
Okay, but the thing is, Trump was doing all these things. He was barefaced lying day in and day out. And what the responsible reporters were doing at that time was giving both sides to keep this fairness, this balance that they're now criticizing you for not doing.
Yeah.
and so what they would do is, Trump would say, this is not quite right, but as an example.
Are you going to give a Trump imitation?
Yeah, right. No,
Are you going to curse?
Yeah, right, exactly. Right. Trump would say, "The sun rises in the west."
Oh yeah, that's my favorite line.
Exactly,
yeah,
right. And they would go, "Well, Donald Trump says the sun rises in the west, but most experts say the sun rises in the east."
Yeah.
And this was their way of being fair.
No, I know. And then they'll quote an expert. They'll
Yes.
quote scientists from Johns Hopkins. Yes, our research has shown that the sun definitely rises in the east. And then you're right. Then they'll quote some deranged guy who supports
who
Trump.
had just finished toking on a joint.
Because no, there's a bias there. I saw it. It's they'll relate it to some FBI agent.
Exactly.
Well, that's you gotta be fair,
right?
Yeah.
Or according to ancient scientists, the Earth, the sun, circulates around the Earth.
So let me ask you this: the older you get,
Yes.
and the more you see evidence of this game that's being played, where Donald Trump is successfully. So I don't think he's crazy like a fox. Maybe is always effectively moving the conversation to the right, lowering the stakes that which is for acceptable behavior that he could be judged against.
Yeah.
And then when you see mainstream journalists sort of going along, where they're struggling with, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, they're struggling with.
Well, no, they've gotten to the point. It's changed from when he was a candidate and they were doing this phony equivalency.
Yeah, phony equivalency.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
They've moved from that. Now they just go, well, the president said the sun rises in the west, but most experts say that it rises in the east, so we think that he was being a little fast.
No, they'll usually say, but there's no factual substance for that. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's how they deal with it. Like when Trump says something for which there is no, or like when he just completely and it's little stuff too, Monroe. what's the
He's
lady's
a
name? Megan.
pathological liar.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Megan, the who married Prince Harry.
Yeah.
Where he called her a nasty woman, and
Yeah,
then he got
right.
mad at the press for saying he called her a nasty
Right.
woman, even though he was quoted.
Well, to be fair to Trump,
Yeah,
which
okay,
I rarely
yeah.
do.
Yeah.
He didn't say she was a nasty woman.
What'd
He
he
just
say?
said she was nasty.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. So the part of the sentence that was in quotes was the nasty part.
Yeah, right. It was in reference
Yeah.
to her because she said something that he didn't like.
Yeah. So I'm
Okay, but this is a better example
Okay,
of
go ahead.
of how he lies. He has been saying he's been in London, and he's been saying that the crowd out there, he didn't see any protesters. He saw this crowd of people who were cheering him on, and if there were protesters, it was only a small number. And it was so obvious that there's 75,000 people out there with placards and what have you, and you had the baby Trump balloon floating, and you had another anti-Trump moving meme on the streets. You know, for him to tell that lie when it's obvious, again, you know, the sun, their sun comes up in the east, and he's saying it's coming from the west.
Yeah.
And you know, you're watching it come up. This is why people literally are questioning his mentality, his saneness, because the stuff he says and does is absolutely, positively nuts.
Yeah. Well, I'm not disagreeing with you in any way. I feel as though, but the only nuanced point I would raise is that I'm not sure if it's the behavior of a person who's certifiably insane and doesn't know what he's doing and is just acting crazy, or if, as I said, he's crazy like a fox and it's intended. So when he says there was no protest, you know, that I don't even know what purpose that serves at the moment, other than it puts reporters on the defensive. So they're constantly being forced to sort.
Well, he also has the Trump nuts out there.
Who just believe anything
Who believe
he says.
anything he says.
All right.
Because if he says it and if he repeats it, then it must be
All right,
true.
so let's talk about the consequence.
Because one of my Trump nuts, just for an example.
Okay, yeah, you deal with them a
Yeah,
lot.
right, exactly. Today argued that those people who were out there protesting against Trump were all communists. You know, to which I responded to him on Facebook, said, were you in London? Did you have a chance to perhaps interview all 75,000 people to make sure that they were communists?
Yeah.
So how are you coming up with this?
Yeah. What a weird thing to just bring up communism. Trump is the one who's always embracing the despot who runs North Korea. He likes some communists.
Right. Well, see, this is the other well-kept secret, that the people that avidly support Trump are crazy too.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of them in this country. All right, the political consequences of Trump's behavior. Again, I've been talking a lot today about. I was up all night reading this article on Beto O'Rourke in the New York Times. In the New Yorker. And one of the things they point out is that Beto O'Rourke cannot draw as many people to his big rallies as Trump does, because Trump's behavior is so outrageous. People go to see the outrageous behavior. There's some. It's a form of entertainment.
No, it's reality TV on display where you too can go watch the show.
So should Democrats sink to that level? Should they start doing reality TV?
Because the reality is that the size of your crowd, I know Trump likes to do sizes.
Yeah, he's got that on his mind.
But the size of your crowd does not translate into how many votes you're going to get. You know, the people who are going to see him are the same, you know.
That's a valid point.
It would be like Beyonce. You know, I mean, she has incredible crowds at her concerts.
Could she win president?
If she ran for president, she wouldn't get.
The local version of that is signs. When I came to Chicago way back in the dinosaur era, people would tell me it's real important to take a look at campaign signs on lawns, because gives you an idea of how popular someone is, how well organized his campaign is. And then over years I realized sometimes there's not a direct correlation. Sometimes it's just that the local aldermen twisted a lot of arms.
Right.
And sometimes people put signs on it. We're going to vote for the other guy anyway.
Right. And sometimes the signs of the opposition were taken down.
Yeah. That's many times. So anyway, I agree with you. I think that. Well, unless it suits you, and I don't think there's any Democrat running right now in which a reality TV show appearance suits them. I'm just running through.
No, the prevailing theory right now is that whoever runs against Trump should and will be opposite Trump. Whoever runs against Trump is going to be intelligent. There's going to be no drama. They're going to be opposite. They're going to be truthful and candid. They're going to be opposite of Trump because even a lot of the Republicans are tiring of Trump.
Well, I don't. Let's get to that.
His Twitter feed is down.
All right. All right. Is that right?
Yes. Not. I mean, it's still a lot of them, but no, it's down. It's not doing as well as it used to.
All right. Now, speaking of Republicans and their attitude toward Trump, the trade war that Trump has ignited with China, and now he wants to ignite one with Mexico. He had a mini one with Canada a while. Most folks in this country really don't understand. I have trouble understanding the underlying issues here with these tariff wars, how much they're in our best interest.
Okay. This is all you need to understand. A, Trump is crazy. B, Trump is incompetent. Okay, end the story.
All right.
No, okay, wait. No, seriously, no, okay. A tariff is a tax.
Yes, indeed. I understand that.
Yeah. And Trump, he's transactional.
Yeah.
So he looks at the world on there's a winner and a loser. Mm-hmm. And so if we charge, if they're making this much money off of us on that, then we need to get that money back some kind of way.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it makes no sense. Any informed economist says this is nuts.
All right, but on a political level, the way I view it is it fits into all his narratives that he's been espousing since he walked down those stairs to announce he was running for office, as you just alluded to. Yeah. And that is, it's us against them. It's us against the world. And so you fire up people with an enemy that you magnify that enemy and distort that enemy. You say it's having a real consequence on your life, and so you should join me in my fight against that enemy. And folks fall in line.
Right.
And so that to me is like the general political strength.
The losers do. I mean,
will the Republican Party, in your humble opinion, fall in line with Donald Trump on his trade policy?
No. And particularly Mexico. Because if Trump goes through with this Mexican tariff, which he swears he's going to do, and he may, although some people are theorizing that this is a bluff because this is how he does business in general. But if he follows through on that, it's going to hurt Texans. It's going to hurt the states that have supported him. His tariff war with China is already hurting Midwest farmers.
Yeah, and then he's willing to spend $16 billion, or says he's going to spend. The states I saw that'll hurt the most, I saw this in an article on this, were Texas, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, and California. They're doing this off the top of my head.
Right.
Now, he couldn't care less about Illinois and California. They're blue states, so everybody can go bankrupt there as far as he's concerned.
Right.
But Michigan, Ohio are swing states, and the Democrats really are hoping they can someday take Texas. They came close with the Beto O'Rourke race.
Exactly. No, and the reason those particular states are going to be hurt is because of the automobiles. Because the way the auto industry works now is we shipped a lot of parts makers to Mexico for the cheaper labor. And so you take the car, you make it in Detroit, some of it, then you ship it to Mexico, and they add all these parts that you need to make it a functioning car. Then you bring it back. Okay, because those parts are being made in Mexico, now the tariff will hit on it, the tax will hit, which is going to raise the prices of cars, push down automobile sales, and everybody loses.
And so you think that he's going to back off? I know I noticed that
I don't know if he is because he's crazy.
He is crazy, but
the Republicans are telling him that you got to back off because it will hurt their reelection chances next year.
Yeah,
and it will screw up the economy. And the only thing Trump has going for him is Obama's economy.
You always give Obama. I'm reluctant to give any president too much credit for any of these.
You have to give him some because
Obama?
Obama, because when he inherited the office, we were losing 900,000 jobs a month.
Yeah,
we were on the verge of a great recession.
Yes. He inherited a terrible economy as opposed
and
to.
He turned it around. With his policies.
All right.
He wasn't Superman.
I am not going to go into an argument about Barack Obama's impact on the economy. I do know in 2009 when he 2009 when he took office, I had a feeling. God, it's so many years ago, Monroe. I had a feeling that the country was in the hands of a thoughtful person who was being analytical and was trying to find a middle ground that Republicans and Democrats could agree on. He was constantly pushing his policies toward the center, from his base. Complete opposite of what Donald Trump does.
Right, and Joe Biden had this great line when he spoke at a rally, I think it was a week ago or so, where he said that as with the economy, Obama economy, Donald Trump inherited a good economy, and he's on the verge of losing it as he's done with his father's fortune and everything else.
Yeah, no, it's I'm got to see those his tax statements to know exactly how much of that father fortune he lost. And that's a perfect segue into our next guest, Jim Coogan from Dwyer & Coogan. It's been a while since it's been our show. I think it's been over a month because he's been very busy with his court case. We're going to take the deep dive on all the Trump legal issues. I have in front of me today's New York Times story. Talks over access to report may be back on. There is a fight brewing, which could ultimately, over subpoena power of Congress, which could ultimately lead to the impeachment of Donald Trump. I don't know how the Democrats can continue to look the other way to the White House refusing to abide by a subpoena. So we're going to bring Jim Coogan on, keep Monroe here. We'll be right back after this.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Discover the breadth and majesty of Chicago's architecture on a Chicago Architecture Center bus tour. From bungalows to Bauhaus, our expert docents will share the fascinating stories behind our city's architecture. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a bus tour right now. Oh my, look at that wonderful piece of architecture.
Cirque du Soleil's Big Top comes back to Chicago with its latest show, Volta. Venture into a captivating voyage of discovery inspired by the adventurous spirit of freedom, where a surge of action sparks a high-voltage journey. Volta. Playing May 18th through July 6th under the Big Top at Soldier Field. Tickets at CirqueDuSoleil.com. Volta thanks their partners Hennessy Black and Champagne Nicolas Fayette.
The Ben Joravsky Show is supported by the Northwestern Summer Writers Conference. Now in its 15th year, the 3-day conference held in Chicago features a diverse array of workshops, speakers, discussions, and readings. Learn more at sps.northwestern.edu/writers. All right, everybody, hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Wednesday, June 5th is moments away. We got Monroe Anderson in studio. We got Ace Attorney Jim Coogan in studio. Yeah, Ben Joravsky's still here, too. Let's see here. The Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you in part by the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 in District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. A big thank you to those unions for jumping on board and bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. And, of course, today's program is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Wednesday, June 5th. And live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, we still got Monroe Anderson in studio. We welcome back Ace Attorney Jim Coogan of Dwyer and Coogan. And we welcome 7th Congressional District candidate Kina Collins. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Benny J. Ben Joravsky.
Yes, indeed. Monroe Anderson is still in the studio. Jim Coogan has joined us. We're going to continue the Trump talk, get into some of the legal issues with Jim Coogan that Donald Trump is facing as he, there's a showdown over congressional subpoena powers. But before we get to that, what you got for me, D?
Well, we have a Trump update.
Oh, okay.
Coming up soon. But first, everybody find us on social media. If you're listening right now and you've yet to do that, boy, you're making a huge mistake. Benny J Show, at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J, Show. Ben, spell that last name for him.
JORAV as in victory, SKY.
Look it up, find us, give us a like, follow, share, review, tell us you don't like us, whatever you want to do. It's fine. Just go ahead and click like, and we are on our way to 2,000 likes. Once we hit 2,000, we'll have our next caption contest, by the way. So head over there, at Benny J Show on Facebook, at Benny J Show on Twitter. It's the Ben Joravsky Show on Instagram, right?
Yes, sir. We're on Instagram. Yeah, I haven't posted in a while.
Yeah,
but,
Ben's in charge of the Instagram account, guys. So if you've got any questions, like that one about him eating wings or something like that from a couple months back. What was that one?
Yeah, there's a lot of me eating chicken, yeah.
Go check that out. You're missing
chicken
that.
tonight, by the way, as I watch
really?
the game. Yeah.
Boy, who would have thought that one? Ben Joravsky eating
chicken, man.
All right, so now to this Trump update, and the following does not come from Breitbart, okay, guys?
Okay, all right.
Just throwing that out there, okay? This comes from CNN.
Okay.
They love conducting polls these days. Once again, this is from SSRS. A majority of Monroe, get ready, buddy. All right, that's all I'm going to say about this story coming up. A majority of Americans say that they think Donald Trump is going to win a second term. According to a CNN poll conducted by SSRS, even as the president's reviews on issues other than the economy remain largely negative, the new poll finds 54% say their best guess is that Trump will win the 2020 election. 41% feel he will lose. Americans are slightly more apt to say Trump will win now that they were to say Barack Obama would win in a second term in May 2011. In a survey conducted just after the death of Osama bin Laden, 50% thought Obama would win in that poll. The new numbers on Trump are a reversal from December, when a narrow majority of 51% said they thought Trump would lose his bid for re-election. Once again, not from Breitbart, from CNN.
That's an interesting little poll there. Before we go to Jim, what do you think about that, Monroe?
I think that it's a result of the House Republicans being so wimpy. You know, Trump is being tough. He's not giving them any, he's ignoring, he's breaking the law all over the place and violating the Constitution. He's not letting his people testify. He's having them ignore subpoenas. And so he looks like the strong man.
Yeah.
And there's this quote in politics, I'm better strong and wrong than weak and right. And the Democrats are being weak but right, and therefore the majority of people now believe that Trump is going to win.
All right. Well,
he's treating them like they're the 90-pound weakling.
Yeah. Well, what I don't know, and I'll have to think about this and read about this, is whether a poll in which people are asked who they think will win is actually a way of surveying whether people are going to vote for somebody. So here in the city of Chicago, where I have most of my experience following politics, there's a strong notion the Chicagoans have. They want to vote for the winner. And it's almost as, even if the winner advocates positions they disagree with, even if the winner has raised their taxes, even if the winner has done things that they strongly disapprove of, they want to vote with the winner. So what I don't know is whether a poll like that, Jim Coogan, what's your thoughts on this? Whether a poll like that indicates that people are actually supporting Donald Trump.
Well, I think that it doesn't indicate that, but especially to echo what Monroe's take on it was, the perception that he's somehow weathering all this stuff, it's not like the last 6 months have gone well. If that was compared to a change from December of 2018, it's not like it's gone well. But if people's perception is, boy, he just gets away with everything, then they could be voting in terms of their interpretation of the inevitability that it's the case. I don't know. It is interesting to tie it back to May of 2011. I think in my head I was thinking, who really cares? There's not even a Democratic frontrunner necessarily yet. But I guess it could mean something. I don't know if they've got May of whatever 2009 or whatever 2007,
exactly.
whoever the last time it would have been. But
a year out.
This certainly speaks to the general issue that you have, is that incumbency is a strong thing in terms of a lot of presidents tend to get second terms unless they really screw something up or have a terrible economy in the 8 months before the election. I mean, so it's a very powerful force, not for every office. Incumbency doesn't win you every office, but with the United States president has so much power, particularly in the media, that just being in that office means you're in the news every day. Right. You can use your entire media operation, which, of course, in this case also includes a propaganda television station, to shape the narrative in every news cycle, and they're going to do it. So these are, I guess, if nothing else, it highlights some of the challenges that a Democratic challenger is up against next year.
All right, and it may wake Democrats up, too. That
Donald,
could be
Donald Trump's wants to weigh in here. Hold on.
No collusion.
I think something had better wake them up. I mean, whatever, if they're waiting for something else, wake up.
Wake up. All right, Jim Coogan, before we take the deep dive on the subpoena showdown, tell folks about your recent court case and why it's been a while since you've been on our show.
Well, thanks, Ben, for the opportunity. So my partner, Carol Ann Gallagher, and I had the distinct honor to represent a woman who lost her mother about 5 years ago. So what we do is we're injury attorneys, and some of our cases involve accusations that medical care was inadequate. So in this case, it had to do with a woman who, our client's mother, had some long-standing heart and lung issues, but in 2014, she went to go to the clinic at the University of Chicago to diagnose what was going on, maybe see if there's anything else somebody could do for her. Our allegation was that one of the tests that they did that they shouldn't have done, it led to a complication in one of the arteries inside of her lower body. And when she got discharged after a few days of trying to sort of deal with the problem, the next morning she crashed, got taken to a different facility, and ultimately didn't survive a day later. So fortunately, we were able to put on a good case. Our client is just a wonderful woman and shouldn't have lost her mom when she did. I mean, her mom wasn't in perfect health, but...
How old was her mother?
61. Mm-hmm. So, given her challenges, she probably didn't have your average 61-year-old's life expectancy, but at the same time, she was all the accounts I ever heard was a pretty vital and pretty cool lady. So that was the case we put on, and we managed to get a verdict for our client. So we're happy about it. It's quite a feeling to know that really means something. It's kind of a vindication of all the things that she's been through since she lost her mom.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Jim Coogan's been pretty busy. So now we're going to put you back to work here for our show. And let's talk about this subpoena showdown. Monroe and I were on the fringes of it. There was a story in today's New York Times, which was pretty much a compilation of what's been going on for the last couple of weeks. But essentially, Jerry Nadler, who is the Judiciary Committee chair in the House, is had it, he says, with the White House. He says they're stonewalling him on his requests to get testimony and documents from former White House officials that are essentially are necessary, he says, to to find out how much obstruction of justice Donald Trump was committing in 2017 as the investigation into his alleged collusion, I'll put that word alleged in there, Monroe, with the Russians was going on. Good journalism, throw that word alleged in there. So talk a little bit about the issues at stake here.
Well, the issue that's at stake is even the 450-page report from the special counsel's office. One of the takeaways and one of the ways that has been very dishonestly spun by the White House is that the first half of it, the part that was investigating how much cooperation that they had with Russian intelligence agencies, the Russian government, and Russian military forces, because all those things are commingled and they're all involved in these different psychological operations trying to manipulate things all around the globe, not just the United States elections. The first half of it, the conclusion ends up being, well, there was some evidence of a lot of cooperation and a lot of contacts, but not enough to necessarily show that there was actually a legal conspiracy. That doesn't tell the whole story when the second half of it is looking into how much did they stop investigators from finding out what was happening. I mean, that's the whole point of having an obstruction of justice investigation. If you hide the evidence, if you destroy documents, and you destroy electronic
documents,
things,
if witnesses wouldn't show up, I mean, so you can't.
And that's what I think that there hasn't. I'm very disappointed, and this has been said by a lot of other people, I assume, by the acceptance of that narrative by the media writ large, that, well, there's these two things and they're just sort of two halves of an investigation. No, they're intricately linked. Their whole purpose of going the next step is a reflection of the fact that Robert Mueller and his whole team are very experienced prosecutors, and being a prosecutor means you're an investigator. You lead investigations, you turn over all the stones to see what's on the other side and what's buried under there. And they know that one of the problems they run into, particularly with white-collar corruption investigations, is the people, especially if those people are still in power when it happens, they're going to do everything they can to cover those things up. And they've got a lot more power to do it than your average Joe. A lot more power to do it than, like a mayor or a mob boss or somebody like that, where you're doing some other kind of RICO or investigation. So the fact that they could only find some things could mean that there isn't any other evidence, or it could mean there's a lot more evidence and it wasn't part of the scope of this investigation, or it was successfully hidden.
All right, so the White House counters that by arguing what?
Well, their argument is, well, you heard it from the president. How many times has he said it in the last month? I'm the most transparent. He even does this little psychological manipulative thing with media gatherings and press sprays where he says, well, you guys all know this. I'm the most transparent president in the history of the country. As if now they're like in on the thing, and the cameras don't turn around to watch them all shaking their heads. No, we know A, that's not true, and B, you're the least transparent president in the history of the United States. Except maybe James Buchanan or something.
He's the best liar, though.
Well, he's certainly the most committed to it. Which is part of I heard you guys on the way over here about talking about whether this is his demonstrable lies about crowd sizes or the number of people who are protesting him. Is it a product of his actual mental capacity problems? Is it a problem of his, or is it a product of him being so committed to lies? Is he the perfect vessel for the big lie? I don't know if we know the answer, but it doesn't matter, because the fact that he's willing to do those things is enough to disqualify him from being in any powerful position. That's why this is so dangerous.
But it's working for him, and that's what's really
Okay, that gets back to that 54% poll that Dennis led with, that says 54% of Americans believe he's going to win re-election. Okay, so at the very least, that says that Americans, for how much they know about this subpoena fight, don't think it's going to play a big role in the election. So if that's the general sense now, Jim Coogan, explain why it's in the best interest of America that the Democrats in the House pursue this subpoena fight.
If House Democrats actually believe in their hearts that number one, the president is dangerous and unqualified, number two, that they have a commitment to the Constitution to do their jobs, then they don't have a choice but to find the political courage to step forward and say, listen, we'll call them impeachment investigations. We actually don't care. It's not about the name that you use, but they are the last entity. Now that the special counsel's investigation is wrapped up, they are the last remaining entity with any power in this country to actually effectuate the next step of any of this investigation, which means bringing in witnesses who are unwilling or only incompletely cooperated with the special counsel's investigation, which means in this particular case, one of the highlights of this week was the communications person, Hope Hicks, who's been around the president since long before he became president. She has turned over or will turn over some things, but she categorically said nothing about the transition and nothing about her time in the White House. That, again, highlights the things that they are going to have to force open now, but it ain't easy, because contempt is the only way to try to enforce a subpoena that a party won't respond to, and their contempt options are limited. I think we might have got into this the last time I was here just a little bit. There's one like wild card in all this that you probably have talked about it a little bit, inherent contempt. I've heard different Congress people have actually talked about it. It's one of it hasn't really been used much ever, like not just in a long time, but not really ever in American history. But they have their own sergeant at arms. They have their own person who physically could arrest somebody. It's just complicated and strange, and it hasn't been used very often because generally speaking, other administrations played by the rules.
Okay, Jim, but if they take it through the courts, the regular court system, and a federal judge says you have to do it, and they don't do it, then...
When you say do it, mean release information or compel a witness to testify.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Yes, to meet the demands of the subpoena. Then they can't ignore the court, so we really do have a constitutional conflict at that point, correct?
Absolutely. That would highlight one of the places where you run into this is an actual crisis, but separate from, for example, similar to following up on a Russian interference investigation with an investigation into how much obstruction of justice there was, if all of the subpoenas are thwarted, if carte blanche, the White House refuses to comply with anything and won't even let civilians who no longer work for them, like Don McGahn, testify, then you must impeach people. That is something that they don't need additional information for that. I mean, just the obstruction itself can be an element of impeachment, and that's why I think last time I was here, I told you the one prediction I was going to give you was Bill Barr would be, or I kind of think should be impeached.
Yes.
Because if he won't comply with legal subpoenas within his own government, that's a dereliction of the responsibilities of the Attorney General.
Right.
There's no other honest way to interpret that.
Okay, but let's go to a worst case scenario.
Go ahead.
Okay. The courts say do it, and they still refuse. No witnesses come forth for the impeachment.
Right.
Then where are we?
Well, they can take whatever evidence they have, whether there's additional witnesses that actually appear in those hearings, those impeachment hearings.
Right.
They can still take their vote. I mean, Congress.
They being Congress. When you say they, you mean Congress.
Congress can set forth articles of impeachment and actually, indict the president or Bill Barr or whoever, as long as they have a majority vote. That's impeachment.
Okay, let's go to part two. You're supposed to have a trial.
That's
now,
right.
If the Republicans continue where they are, and so nobody comes forth to testify at the trial.
They ignore the trial.
Yeah, right.
They ignore subpoenas to come to testify at a trial.
This is a worst case scenario.
A congressional impeachment. If you're going to defy Congress, this is just taking it. Monroe's right. They're taking it. He's taking it to the nth degree. They're defying a subpoena. I don't know anybody in this room who could defy a subpoena without going to jail.
Right.
Of course, they would continue to defy it. You're right, and that is, I think that is what would happen. Yeah. But I also still think, number one, so this is kind of like that political question about the failed impeachment theory. Do you do it knowing that you'll never get 67 votes in this Senate to convict either Barr or the president and actually mete out a sentence of you're being removed from office? I don't think, now, if there's two sides to that. Number one, people say, well, will that animate the president's base? Will that animate Republicans to come out and vote in defense of him in 2020? I don't know what could possibly animate them more than everything that they get bombarded with every single day.
Yeah.
So I don't see that as much of a political risk as I think the other side is much more serious. If this group of Democrats that have taken the speaker's gavel in 2018 and has an opportunity to do something to defend the Constitution right now fails to do it, I think they're going to have a serious problem in 2020 getting their people out.
Right. People are going to be so disappointed.
What do you have to go vote for? How do you, clearly.
I agree 100%.
People said in those exit polls in November of 2018, healthcare was like their number one concern. Okay, great. In the meantime, we have staved off making more of mincemeat of the Affordable Care Act. So that's already been, that's happened. Plus, there's no opportunity to pass any more healthcare bills anyway. Yeah. So, okay, so there's your number one issue. If they don't stand up for the other part of it, which is having some kind of a check on the president, then that will be a failure.
Yeah.
I think that all the rest of this stuff surrounding Nancy Pelosi and how Nadler and how some of the other leadership keeps sort of hemming and hawing and sort of hedging around the question of impeachment, I think it's a dance that they're doing because they know it's inevitable. And they're trying to build it up so that it looks like that they only did it because it is absolutely because they have to do it.
Well,
but okay. One thing with that though is their argument that they want to focus on the issues that matter to people. That when they're out there campaigning, nobody's asking about subpoenas or Mueller report or anything. The things that the American people want are not going to come to fruition because Mitch McConnell's not going to let it on the floor.
Right.
So this is silly as far as
right.
I'm
You're right.
concerned.
I mean, that's the response to that is, hey, why aren't you stop wasting your time on obsessing about the president? We want bread and butter issues. Well, hey, listen, none of those things are passing with this Senate. None of those passing things.
Yeah.
And Mitch McConnell he has explicitly said he is the Grim Reaper. He will kill any responsible, decent reform bills, anything about improving access to voting or improving healthcare access.
Yeah.
So that's where they should lead with is, hey, they've passed whatever 20 good-hearted bills in the last 6 months.
Well, it might be 100.
Then it's even more than that.
Yeah, it's 100 bills.
By the way, our next guest that's coming after is Kina Collins, is running for Congress in the 7th Congressional District here in Chicago. So it'll be interesting to ask her whether this is an important issue. The subpoena fight is an important issue that congressional candidates will be running on. I share your concern, Jim and Monroe. You've articulated this point very clearly that Trump has just basically given a big middle finger to Congress, and he is betting, his political strategists are betting, that the American people won't care, that the American people will say, we don't think this investigation is worth the time that we're spending on it, the money we're spending on it, the effort we're spending on it. So we don't care ultimately if Donald Trump defies the subpoena of the federal of the Democrats in Congress, which would be a pretty astounding statement by the populace of the United States if that's the way they view things at this stage. That then Donald Trump would have been successful.
And this will be 1933 Germany.
Yeah,
I'm serious.
I mean, it's the only thing I would say about that, Ben, is that it's not just giving the middle finger to Democrats in the House. It's a middle finger to the entire United States Constitution. I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about here. And they have to keep framing it that way to the extent that it's possible. Before we started talking, we were mentioning some of the people who do this on other, outlets on the news all the time. That is being done to an extent, but it can't. That has to be part of every single message about why they're doing what they're doing. The Constitution has a process. The Constitution is a system that if people won't act in good faith, it will break. And the president, as one of the main three branches of government, is too powerful to act like this without jeopardizing breaking the entire thing.
Yeah.
And for that is the kind of a crime that you must be held accountable for. Otherwise, there is no Constitution. And that's what they're giving the middle
Well,
finger.
it'd be interesting to see how ultimately this would come down to the Supreme Court. If the Democrats pursue this issue of trying to get the White House to comply with their subpoenas, ultimately, don't you agree it'll come down to the Supreme Court?
Well, the court enforcement of contempt could be difficult, and I think may or may not work because they'd have to get to the Supreme Court, which I think is going to. There's a time constraint there, how long it takes to get to that far. But that's why I mentioned this inherent contempt thing, which is a weird kind of wild card, I admit. But the reason why it's been dug up out of the history books lately is because they don't have to wait for Article 3 federal court to actually find someone in contempt to go arrest them. In theory, if they issue a contempt order, they could arrest them themselves. Now, it has to do with whether Congress is in session. There's a lot of other complications that go into doing it. But
and there are other players, fortunately. Well, first of all, when Mueller is subpoenaed, he will show up because he's a good soldier. So he will show up. Yeah. And while during his last appearance, first and last appearance, where he said he'd only say what was in the report, when they ask him other questions, he may, there's a possibility that he will answer those and not just recite the Mueller report.
Yeah, take the fifth.
Yeah, and also you have Trump's finances in the courts. And those will pop sooner or later. Right. And once that pops,
that's another subpoena fight that we could have.
Well, and other entities are having more success.
Right.
Deutsche Bank is turning things over.
Yeah.
The state of New York is acquiring documents. So part of the inevitability of Donald Trump has always been premised upon people not realizing how much of a fraud he really is.
Yeah.
That dam may be breaking, and there's no time like the present because there has to be some reality to this TV at some point.
All right, now I have to. You've referenced to inherent contempt several times today, and you said you talked about it the last time in this show. Just explain to people what inherent contempt is.
It's independent of the court system. Normally, you get a subpoena, you have to comply by it or comply with it. If you don't, a judge will issue a warrant for your arrest and say that you're in contempt of court. Mm-hmm. The sheriff can go pick you up and bring you into court and answer the question or turn over the documents or whatever. Congress has, as it's been developed over the years within their powers, their own contempt power. It's been determined that because they have the ability to legislate and the ability to investigate, they can call witnesses and, without asking a judge to make any determinations, issue their own writ of contempt and say, Joe over there, Don McGahn, is in contempt. You must appear here. Now, if he evades the jurisdiction of D.C. and stays out of D.C. and the sergeant-at-arms can't find him, it is more complicated than the federal marshals tracking somebody down because they've got an entire federal marshal apparatus. Wow. But it's not illegal. It's a real thing. It does exist.
And they have cells.
I have a hard time. That's just so wild. I just have a hard time believing it'll come to that. But you know what? We could be here 6 months from now.
They did it once a long time ago with an IRS commissioner, like in the 19-teens or something like that. The guy was held up in a fancy, I think it was the Willard Hotel. I don't know if that has to do with the Willard
Hotel.
Romney but that's where they actually housed somebody because he refused to show up to talk about something to do with the tax code. I don't know what the back.
All right. Well, if we're talking, I mean, that'd be pretty wild if it came down to congressional marshals coming down trying to track down Hope Hicks.
We're in wild times. Man.
We are wild times. All right. Now, we had a conversation briefly off air about the games that William Barr, our Attorney General, has been playing in this investigation. And you sent me a clip from a TV show interview that I found fascinating. Explain to our listeners exactly the little new song that William Barr is singing and the significance of his change.
Well, Barr has a tremendous capacity for making whatever he's saying sound boring and as if it's just simple routine. And he's good at it. It's probably a practiced skill, or it's just how he's always talked. I don't know. But there was a recent comparison of one of the key concepts here that they have used to try to create a good talking point for the president is, no. Robert Mueller had the capacity to decide and make a determination of whether the president had committed crimes, including obstruction of justice. Mm-hmm. The fact that he didn't means that he couldn't, not that he was constrained by department policy. Yes. The stated policy of the Department of Justice is because of the inherent powers of the president that you cannot indict them. And that's also built on the idea that they know as prosecutors they have tremendous power. They can't just say somebody is guilty of something if that person has no ability to prove that they're innocent or has no due process available to them. And because of the president's position, they wouldn't be able to be indicted, so they can't have a trial. So it's not fair to call him out and say that he did something wrong. However, that is not what Mr. Barr said at his confirmation hearing, where he admitted that the Department of Justice has this policy and that it is not fair to make a determination about somebody, specifically somebody who is the president, when you can't fill out the rest of this process and there isn't the rest of due process where they can actually have their day in court and find out whether they're guilty or not. So it's subtle, and because both things, you listen to him and you're like, was there an inconsistency there? There's a lot of blah, 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 kind of mealy mouth sort of stuff surrounding it. It's like in our cases in court, it's easier when you have a very strict question and answer to compare two things to show just how inconsistent they are, but it's there. And he has subtly shifted that out of convenience because he is apparently part of the talking points apparatus to protect the president.
So when he was a nominee, in his testimony in front of Congress, he says the Justice Department, by policy, cannot indict a sitting president. And now that he's the head of the Justice Department, he says, well, they could indict one if they want to, but they clearly they must not have the evidence if they didn't indict him, because they could indict him if they wanted to, which...
In other words, total and complete exoneration.
Yeah.
Which it is not, but if you spin it the right way, you can pretend.
And you see the frustrating thing about this, Monroe, God, this sounds like my fights with the city of Chicago over their policies down through the years. If they say whatever they want at any given time just to justify whatever it is that they're doing, knowing full well that they have the capability of just changing their tune a month later, it's very difficult to land a solid punch. And if most people aren't paying attention, like people in the city of Chicago generally aren't paying attention,
or people in America,
aren't paying attention, you can get away with anything.
Yeah, until it catches up with you.
Well, do you think it's going to catch up to William Barr?
I don't know where he fits into this scheme, but in our present moment, where they have not actually impeached anyone yet, they might determine that the strategy should start with him, because the stonewalling, specifically from the DOJ, is one of the most substantial elements of holding up congressional investigations and getting access to meaningful information. It could be that they just don't waste their time, though, because 2020 is around the corner, and you may as well just go straight to the top.
That's kind of how I view it. Right. Yeah, don't waste your time with Barr.
Well, see, I was going back and forth on that, and the conclusion I've come to is get them both.
Okay.
I mean,
right.
You can do both.
Both.
Yeah, hit
a
them
twofer.
both.
Hey, 2 for 1. It's like getting pizza and chicken for the price of
Constitutional
one.
fire sale.
All right, before I let you guys go and bring on Kina Collins, I have to ask you this, Jim Coogan. I've not prepped you in any way for this. This is on my mind. All right. I think I'm the only person in the world who's read both the Mueller report and the federal indictment of Ed Burke. How about that, okay? And I'm obsessed with the federal indictment of Ed Burke here in the city of Chicago. It tells us so much about how city of Chicago actually works and what aldermen feel they could get away with during the Rahm years. Now, here's what I don't understand. Please explain this to me if you can. If you can't, just say, Ben, I don't know the answer to this. The feds were taping, follow me on this, Ed Burke's conversations with Danny Solis, 2 aldermen, while they were conspiring to figure out a way to squeeze a developer into hiring Ed Burke's law firm to handle property taxes in exchange for a TIF handout of $18 million, okay? So the city of Chicago is going to give the developer $18 million in TIF handout. Questionable whether he needed it, deserved it, or whether it was a productive way of spending our money. And in exchange, that developer, to get it, was going to have to hire Burke for his property taxes. All right? The feds knew about this because they were listening in on Ed Burke's conversations with Danny Solis. All right? Danny Solis and Ed Burke went on to vote for giving the developer the money. Essentially, that to me says that is a shakedown, an attempted shakedown of a vendor in the city of Chicago. How could the feds allow a crime to be committed? If you're the federal investigators and you know 2 aldermen are shaking down a guy who's just got voted $18 million, right? How do you allow that to happen? Are there rules that govern? Do the feds have to look the other way to allow the crime to actually be committed? You know, because like in a TV show, you'll like just when the guy is set up about to buy the drugs, all the cops come bursting in. So why did they come bursting into the city council chamber with their guns drawn? Hands up, everybody! No more TIF deals. You know what I'm saying? Like, where were the feds on this one?
You know, if I were to guess, and you know, we'll never know what the motivations were when they were putting the investigation together. If I were to guess, they may have had concerns about how strong the evidence was at the time, what the words were, like how much it could have been spun as we were just talking in hypotheticals, we're just talking in, you know, this wasn't specific enough. Because I haven't listened to the tapes, I didn't read the indictment. I don't know how specifically they quote these things. You might find out when the trial happens, because then they'll hear it. Yeah. There's also the element of, I mean, it's a shakedown, but it's also a shakedown that they're a willing participant in. So who's like, they're not the sort of they're not a victim who's about to get killed or something like that. So are the feds as worried about the contractor in that situation? The party that's the victim here is the city of Chicago.
Yeah, the taxpayer.
It's Ben Joravsky's tax bill. No, I'm not saying that doesn't have merit. I don't know why that wouldn't factor in more predominantly in the immediacy of stopping this thing, because conspiracy is conspiracy. You don't have to follow through on it to convict somebody of a conspiracy. You can stop it in the meantime, just like you just highlighted.
Man, what a fantasy I had, man. The feds bursting into the city council chambers. All right, hands up, Alderman.
That does sound like Ben's fantasy, doesn't
frisking
it?
Mayor Rahm. All right, Mayor. Where's that TIF money? Oh, it's in your pocket.
Take a chill pill, man.
Okay, Mayor Rahm. Anyway, Jim Coogan, Monroe Anderson, great conversation as always. Really appreciate it. It's always one of our most popular shows when we have you two on talking Trump. So thank you very much for coming in. We got Kina Collins sitting on deck from the 7th Congressional District. We're going to ask her all these tough impeachment questions when she comes on. She's ready for it. We'll be right back after this.
No collusion.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan. Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. See the city from a whole new angle on a Chicago Architecture Center tour. With more than 85 tours to choose from, there are endless stories to discover. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm on a tour. Oh my, what magnificent architecture!
At Chicagoland Cremation Options, we are committed to listening, educating, and guiding your family through the cremation process. Whether it is time of death or when planning your wishes for the future, Chicagoland Cremation Options can accommodate you at an affordable price and with great dignity. Avoid funeral home costs with direct access to a crematory for a cremation. Chicagoland Cremation Options, just south of O'Hare, 5 minutes west of Chicago. It's a family-owned business and operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Visit it at ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you in part by Green Element Resale. It's located at 6241 North Broadway in Chicago. And guys, just believe me when I say this, it's badass, okay? Furniture, appliances, lamps, books, clothes, electronics. Guys, it's a thrift shop, but it's the only thrift shop in Chicago that helps bring you the Ben Joravsky Show. So if you're ever in Broadway between Granville and Devon, tell them thank you. And go check out Green Element Resale, 6241 North Broadway, and find more information at greenelementresale.com. Head over to Green Element Resale and save on money. That's right. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
All right, very good. Jim Coogan and Monroe Anderson have left the building. Jim Coogan and Monroe Anderson have left the building, but Kina Collins is here. She's running for Congress in the 7th Congressional District on the west side of the city of Chicago. Goes out into the suburbs as well, Oak Park, etc. It actually goes into Englewood.
Also in South Side?
Yeah, it's a long, windy, gerrymandered district. We'll talk all about that before we get to Kina. D, you got an update for me?
Oh, absolutely. Here, I got to weigh in here with the live stream chat room. They're going crazy here today. Let's see here. Just read some comments from people here. Earlier we mentioned that we did a poll from CNN saying that they think Donald Trump will win, 54%, right?
Yeah.
Left-wing Limbaugh weighed in. He said,
right.
I think Trump will win. The
Okay.
majority of Dem candidates don't believe in anything, so why would swing voters believe in them?
Wow. All right. Well, left-wing Limbaugh's feeling the Trumpster, huh?
And finally here, I think now one of the big things, listeners on our live stream chat, if you've yet to join it, you should because it's fascinating. One thing that our live stream chat room loves to do is just mess with Ben Joravsky about how his love for Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi.
Okay, more Pelosi than Biden, but whatever.
So I think this is where they're going when Stephen asks this question. Ben, what is your definition of a corporate Democrat?
Wow, Stephen. A Democrat who looks out for the interest of corporations over working people. That's what my definition would be. That's me just thinking it through, Stephen. And we had one as our mayor for the last 8 years. And Hillary Clinton's campaign, unfortunately, sure looked like she was far more concerned with the interests of the well-to-do. And corporation also serves as sort of like a metaphor in sort of a class struggle, if you will, for looking out for the interests of the well-to-do. So like when you think of taxation, you don't want to go too far in the direction of progressive taxes because you don't want to upset the well-to-do. You don't want to tax like Wall Street profits, et cetera, Kina. Right. So that to me is where we are. That's how I would define a corporate Democrat.
Okay, all right, buddy. Well, let's hold those feet to the fire because I'm pretty sure this is where Stephen was going with this question. Is Joe Biden a corporate Democrat?
Oh, yeah. Duh. Yeah.
His first fundraiser was with insurance companies.
Yeah, and so was Barack Obama. All right, let's be real, Democrats out there. So was Rahm Emanuel, so are some of the people that you've been electing time in, time again. So not my fault. I most cases, well, I did vote for Barack Obama.
It's so funny, Stephen.
Don't lie.
Stephen weighed in all caps here. He said he literally was Rahm's coworker in that administration. Ben, please.
Yes, he was. Rahm worked for Barack Obama, and it was that identification with Barack Obama that, in my humble opinion, convinced many Chicagoans to elect him, to vote for him in 2011. And then when Barack reminded us of that, Kina Collins, and you were living here in Chicago, many Chicago voters said, well, yeah, he was with Barack, and I'll give him one more chance. And he's wearing the sweater. Yeah. And then guess what happened? Laquan McDonald video pops out about 6 months later. Chicagoans are like, what did we do?
That's right.
So for all those downloaders out there, hey, join the Facebook, or not the Facebook, but the YouTube live stream, and send us a message. Be like Steven. We do it 1 to 3 p.m. Tuesday through Friday, chicagoreader.com, chicago.suntimes.com/Joravsky. Check us out, won't you?
All right, very good. Thank you, Dee. All right, Kina Collins from the 7th Congressional District. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, very good. A little bit before we take an issue, I already said I'm going to ask you about impeachment and how much of an issue that is in the 7th Congressional District, how strongly you believe in it. If you win, you may, by then it would be a whole new Congress. But if this battle is still going on with Trump, you may have to vote on that. So before we get to that, a little bit about your background. Is your first run for office?
This is my first run for office. Mm-hmm. So I was born and raised on the west side of Chicago, still live in Austin, so deeply rooted in the 7th Congressional District. A lot of my background in organizing work started as gun violence prevention and criminal justice reform work, and has now elevated into healthcare advocacy. My day job is to work as the national organizers for Physicians for a National Health Program, which is essentially an organization that has a base of 20,000 doctors and medical students from across the country who are fighting to secure a single-payer Medicare for all system. So for me, it's not just like a political policy talking point. I've been traveling the entire country from blood red Alabama and Louisiana and Texas, all the way to the Rust Belt in Pittsburgh or the ports of entry in San Diego, working with doctors and medical students to secure a single payer system, right? And it's the actual physicians who are advocating for this. Attended Von Steuben on the north side. We had a conversation about that. Went to school at Louisiana State University down in South Louisiana in Baton Rouge, and came back, started a community organization called Chicago Neighborhood Alliance, where we focused on the reduction of gun violence and particularly civic engagement. Did a ton of work around this last municipal election and helping some of the new city councilmen get elected. And I also co-authored House Bill 5544, the Illinois Council on Women and Girls Act. And it is essentially an advisory council to the governor and the state General Assembly to advise them on any policies that directly impact women and girls across the state. And it was actually signed under Bruce Rauner. It was an extremely progressive bill, talked about transgendered rights, talked about expanding reproductive health care and education, talked about pay wage equity and making sure that the council was racially proportionate to the state. And really, during that time, I traveled in 68 counties out of 102 in the state, talking to different community groups, trying to get their buy-in for the bill. And I was just like blown away at how we were all experiencing the same economic realities in these working class places. So after it got passed, I thought I could do this, right? And threw my hat in the ring for Illinois 7th.
All right, before we go into some of the things you raised here, I got to go back to something you said. You went to Von Steuben. I have to say this, folks. Okay, this is how old I am. This is how ancient I am. My oldest daughter went to high school with Kina Collins. Yeah. So, I I'm now seeing kids that are my daughter's age running for Congress. Man, I'm like so old.
Who's getting older, us or you? Like, yeah.
It's him.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Always him.
Old man River over here. But so I remember these kids when they were in high school, and now they're grown up and professional and running for Congress, and good God. Anyway, all right, enough of that, me reminiscing about how old I am. All right, Kina Collins, single payer.
Yeah.
I say this all the time on the show. Dennis, that good-looking young man over there, who's the producer of the show, he firmly believes that the Democrats can beat Donald Trump if they, without any apologies, nominate a candidate who says, without, like I said, just no doubt, I am for single payer. I'm going to use all the power I have as president working with Congress to get a single payer. Dennis believes that this is a selling point that could enable Democrats to defeat Donald Trump. You say you've been all over the country.
That's right.
Alabama, you've been talking about this.
Yeah.
Do you agree with young Dennis over there?
Dennis is 100% spot on the money.
Oh, wow. It happens every now and again.
So here's the facts. Let's take our emotion out of it. It is fiscally responsible for us to be taking on the stance of a single payer system. And I'm not talking about Medicare for all or Medicare for America and all this other stuff that they're coming out with. This needs to be a national health insurance program that is streamlined. We are losing a ton of money through copays, through premiums, through overhead, through marketing, through insurance companies who are not using those dollars to basically keep us healthy. And they use a lot of the money to vet out sick people in our country and make more profit off of those who are healthier, right? That's why we see things, huge contentions with pre-existing conditions, for example. We need clean healthcare, and this clean healthcare bill in this country where it includes mental health and vision and dental and reproductive health and is culturally competent, right? It was the defining issue in 2018. Healthcare is a purple issue. It's not red, it's not blue, and it quintessentially strikes at the heart of what is going on, where this fight is not me and you, it's top and bottom. It's those who have and those who have not, right? And any American, whether it's a farmer, someone living in the Appalachians, someone down south, someone in the Rust Belt, someone here in Chicago, can understand that we all really are a illness away from bankruptcy. And that's just, it's not a political issue, it's a moral issue.
Do you think that the number of people who have private insurance and are happy with their private insurance will vote against a candidate who endorses single payer or Medicare for all, whatever you want to call it, on the grounds that, well, I got mine, so why should I pay for them?
Well, what I would say is I would ask them how informed that are they with their insurance, because a lot of insurance companies don't even cover everything. So the reality is people are not in love with their health insurance. They like the coverage and the providers that they have. They like their doctors, their nurses, folks who they interact with. They don't care about the person working at Aetna or Blue Cross Blue Shield. And if they really knew the profit that's being made by these insurance companies and how many people are psyched out, I think that this is something that is a uniting platform for a lot of Americans, and it's to your benefit, right? Because you should be fully covered, and a lot of folks who have insurance are not.
Now, I have had this conversation for so many years since Obamacare was passed. That was it was a crowning achievement of Barack Obama's first term. I don't think he got any Republican support for it. He used the majority that the Democrats had at the time to get it through. And my friends of the corporate Democratic persuasion were saying, Ben, you're being unrealistic to hold out for a single payer, for a government-sponsored plan, that we got to keep the insurance companies in it because you don't want them to be opposed to it and using their might to defeat it. This is good, pragmatic strategy. This is kind of like Rahm Emanuel type Democrats were telling me this.
Right.
Okay. Do you think, in retrospect, when you look back, Kina, that was a wise policy for Democrats to pursue, to pass a healthcare policy that has the insurance companies still embedded in it?
I just don't see the benefit. And my stance personally in this campaign on the campaign trail would be we need to take privatization out of things like our healthcare industry, our education system. I mean, they even have jails privatized, which is really weird, right? And it's just contradictory to what folks who believe in the Constitution say, right? Our liberty, life, pursuit, and liberty and life. I'm sorry. Liberty, life, and pursuit of happiness, right? And so for me, I think that if they really looked at how their doctors in particular are spending 85% of their time filling out administrative work and paperwork and not dealing with your preventative care and the things that could keep you healthy, then they would see that it's not very smart to keep insurance companies in healthcare bills.
Yeah. Well, maybe that was the only thing that Barack Obama got. I will be arguing this point forever with my friends of the Rahm Emanuel corporate Democratic persuasion, whether we could have gotten something a little more comprehensive back in 2010 or whenever it passed. All right. Now let's talk about you running for the 7th Congressional. That is a district that historically has been on the west side of Chicago. It's a little more spread out now. It goes in, as you said, in the south side areas, goes into the western suburbs. The incumbent is a longtime Democrat, liberal Democrat, Danny Davis. Why should voters vote Danny Davis out of office?
Well, first off, I would say that this is a part of the democratic process, right? We've had someone in leadership who's served in leadership for 22 years. And I think whenever we have a primary, constituents and voters in our district should have the opportunity to hear what are the priorities of our district and how are we going to get those things implemented and moved forward, right? So it's important for me to mount this challenge because I think that this is what voters deserve, and they deserve an option. They deserve to hear different ways to move our district forward. So, and
do you feel it's like a daunting task? I mean, the guy's I remember his first, that's how old I am. I remember his first aldermanic election, 1979. He's been around forever. He's a well-known name. What makes you confident that you can defeat him?
Well, I think that we have a groundswell right now, right? Folks are looking to be mobilized. They're looking to take an angle where we are implementing leadership that's interested in coalition building and movement building, right? We have a lot of pressing issues on the forefront, and we have to have a political reckoning with the Democratic Party on elevating new leadership, right? Or we get left behind in a lot of these conversations when we talk about healthcare, when we're talking about the reduction of gun violence, and we see high schoolers essentially who can't even vote, who are pushing the envelope and saying we need universal background checks, and people are slow walking in Congress. It's time that we have a serious conversation about who are we going to get to move these things forward, particularly around environmental justice, right? There's a timeline on that. That's not something that we can just wait on. And so for me, we have to, like I said, engage in that coalition and movement building. And I think that we saw a lot of that in the midterms and here in the municipal elections in the city of Chicago.
Now, generally when I think about the congressional races from 2018 that you just alluded to, the candidates that got the Democrats most excited, it seemed like, were people like Lauren Underwood or Sean Casten, who were running in areas represented by Republicans. So the notion was that you could drive out a Trump supporter and put a Democrat in that person's place. So it was advancing progressive policies this way. In your case, you're running against a Democrat who'll probably vote the same way you would vote on most issues. So what is the advantage to Democrats to getting somebody younger and newer in office, in your humble opinion? What is the advantage for Democratic voters to have someone like you in the office?
So I think it's also approach. to a lot of the legislation that'll be brought forth, right? So one of the most defining things, I think, for me as a candidate against the incumbent who's had a long and distinguished career is that I'm not going to take corporate PAC money. I'm not going to take fossil fuel money and money from pharmaceutical companies or private insurance companies, because I'm in this work, right? Organizing around the country, hearing the stories of everyday Americans, and seeing that reality lived out in places like Austin, where I live in the district, which is extremely a working class community, right? So that in itself, voting and approaching the legislation on how to implement it, I think is a huge difference. I think you mobilize differently when you don't have the interests of corporate PACs or corporate lobbyists, right? And it allows you to put working class families first, right? Because if they're the ones who you are responsible to or being held accountable to, then you won't just vote the right way. You're going to do the right thing, right? Because that's who's with you. And so for me, I've just seen across the Democratic Party how we have allowed special interest groups, lobbyists. Like I told you, the crust of a lot of my organizing work was in gun violence prevention. The NRA has bought and paid for our Congress, a ton of people, and our Congress and congressional leaders. And for me, that's just not something that I'll be doing.
All right, that is Kina Collins. She's running for Congress in the 7th Congressional District, the incumbent Danny K. Davis. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to ask her the impeachment question. We'll be right back after this.
Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
All right, everybody. After 5 years in Andersonville, Murray and White, a.k.a. Ben's favorite place to shop, has made the difficult decision to close their doors. But everything in the store is now on sale. Notable sale items like Voluspa and Nest fragrances brand candles are 20% off. Maybe. I say maybe because, boy, our host, Ben Joravsky, loves him some candles. All the peppermint candles are gone. I know that much. That's his favorite candle.
No. I've decided it's the cannabis-smelling ones.
Oh, cannabis-smelling candles. I think people light candles to get rid of the smell of cannabis.
Oh, is
but
that
whatever,
right?
Whatever. That's
Who
cool.
knew?
Cannabis candles.
I just wanted to say cannabis because that's the correct word these days.
Yeah,
D,
you better start using that word.
Cannabis.
He loves cannabis candles, guys, apparently. I didn't even know they made those. Whoa.
Yeah,
so
cannabis
notable
candles.
sale items like Voluspa and Nest fragrances brand candles are 20% off. The peppermint and the cannabis candles are gone, but these lines can rarely be found on sale. So while 20% isn't the largest discount, lovers of both these popular candle lines like Ben have been buying them up. All rugs are 30% off in store and new orders through June 1st. All floor sample furniture is 30 to 50% off. Antique furniture pieces 40 to 50% off. Pillows 40% off. People, you get the point. Go to Murray and White now before the doors close for good. After 5 years in Andersonville, Murray and White have made the difficult decision to close their doors, but right now everything's on sale. Maybe not those candles because Ben Joravsky probably bought all of them. But head to Murray and White now to save yourself some money. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Mr. Joravsky, pass me the cannabis candle. Okay. Thank you. And take us home.
I knew you'd love that cannabis candle. Yes, indeed. Kina Collins running for 7th Congressional District, candidate for Congress in the 7th Congressional District. Not only is she a candidate for Congress, not only is she an advocate for single payer, not only is she standing up in the fight for sensible gun legislation, she plays one heck of a piano, huh, D? Yeah, that girl can play the piano.
All of our guests are so good at piano.
Isn't that amazing how that works?
It's crazy.
She learned that at Von Steuben, all right? The music class of Von Steuben.
That's right.
Some teacher taught her how to do that. All right, D, you got an update for me?
Heard a lot of good things about that Von Steuben, I tell you what. Maybe it's just because I hang out with Ben Joravsky all the time. But, okay, we have two updates.
Panthers.
Go Panthers. There you go. Okay, we have two updates here. Number one, former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel.
Take a chill pill, man.
Okay,
that guy.
What is he up to now?
Ben, you're going to get a kick out of this.
I bet I will.
All right, former Chicago mayor and longtime corporate Democratic operative, am I right? Rahm Emanuel will join Boutique Investment Bank Centerview Partners, LLC, bringing a Rolodex built over a 30-year political career. It says here that he's going to Wall Street. Mr. Emanuel, who left the office last month, will open a Chicago office for Centerview and advise clients on merger deals and other matters, he said in a joint interview today with Centerview co-founders Blair Efron and Robert Pruzan, two people who will never be on this program. They sound really rich. But, Mayor Rahm going to Wall Street.
I think Stephen, one of our listeners, weighed in. What's a corporate Democrat?
Yeah.
Stephen, that pretty much sums it all up right there. By the way, I knew it was just a matter of time before Rahm cut that deal.
Man.
And, he ruled as though he was already looking out for the interests of his hedge fund friends, his investor. Wow. Kina Collins, that is something else. I didn't think he was going to go work like in a domestic violence shelter or going to, work for advocating for sensible gun control or for single payer.
I mean, after your administration has been complicit in a cover-up of the murder of a child, I don't think you do those things either.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not. I went to the screening last night for 16 Shots.
Oh, yeah.
That 3 years ago, running for Congress was not in the plan. Right? I was on the front lines with William Calloway and Camila Williams and a lot of the youth activists, and people thought we were crazy for participating in those protests. But the documentary, and I hope everybody watches it when it comes out, it really shows how we basically cratered the entire existence of what the Chicago machine really is. Mm-hmm. And it was, pretty much taken down by a bunch of 17 to 24-year-olds who just had enough.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised with Rahm.
Yeah, 16 Shots. Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I heard it's coming out. It's supposed to be good. Do you got another update?
From the former mayor to the current, Mayor Lori Lightfoot today added another round. Well, this, by the way, comes from the one and only Fran, the Woe Man Spielman in the Chicago Sun-Times.
Okay.
Mayor Lightfoot today added another round to the seemingly endless parade of ethics reforms tailor-made to change the culture of City Hall corruption laid bare by the racketeering indictment against Alderman Ed Burke. That's a good writing, Fran. You're not playing around. Lightfoot's plan includes allowing the city inspector general to audit city council committees, banning some, but not all, outside employment for aldermen, and higher fines for ethics violations. She went on to say that this is because of Ed Burke. Here's the quote from Lightfoot. There's no mistake that this is designed to address the problem of Ed Burke trying to monetize his position as an alderman and as a chairman.
Yeah, I would take the word trying out of that sentence. He did monetize his position as chairman of the finance committee, as the alderman of the 14th Ward, by having a property tax business. And I don't know what the constitutionality is of banning aldermen from outside employment in terms of saying, like, you cannot have a property tax business. I certainly see the merit in banning such an operation. I've had this conversation with property tax lawyers who are also politicians for a long time, and there's a definite conflict of interest, in my humble opinion, when the chief financial, overseer in the city council of all contracts, of all TIF deals, is also a property tax attorney and is able to shake down business from people who got their hand out looking for, a TIF money for their developments that they probably don't even need. So, yeah, it's a long time coming. I welcome it. And to the point that Kina was making, I think they're tied together. I think that the eruption of protests that took place it started around November, around Thanksgiving of 2015, when the Laquan McDonald video was first released, right. In one way or other sort of led to just the general dissatisfaction with the way things are done in the city of Chicago. And then, of course, ultimately worked to Lori Lightfoot's benefit, even though, ironically, many of the activists who are at the forefront of the movement against the policies of Rahm in relation to Laquan McDonald did not support Lori Lightfoot.
Yeah, we remember her from the police board meeting and hearings. At this point, it's just accountability, right? She is in that position now. So it is up to us as the collective, as the greater community of Chicago, to hold her accountable. and you can say the right things, but we have to see the action behind it. Yep.
You're not afraid of saying that, even though she's now the most powerful person in the city of Chicago.
I mean, I think that saying that holding someone accountable is not just only an act of resistance, it's an act of love. That's how you say I love my community, is when I'm going to hold elected officials and those who have power accountable, right? And that's not a slight to her. That should be for everybody, right? Like anybody who's an elected official. And so I think that when you know better, you do better. And as a community, as activists, as organizers, we know better, right? When we were doing the protest 3 years ago, and even further, because there were activists who had started with Rekia Boyd, right? We had no clue. We just knew that it was wrong, right? This is wrong. And we did it peacefully. And I don't know if a lot of people paid attention to other direct actions that were happening around the country, but we exercised our constitutional right to an economic boycott, and it worked, right? And then we built on that, and we kept building, and also got other people elected into city council now, right? And so I would hope that her administration and her would take that as a challenge, to do what hasn't been done in Chicago in a really long time, and that's to do good and seek justice.
All right, now let me ask you the impeachment question. You were sitting here listening to Jim Coogan and Monroe Anderson talk about the pending showdown between Democrats in Congress and Donald Trump. And the Democrats, you would be, if you were victorious, one of those Democrats in Congress are demanding that Donald Trump turn over evidence, have some of his former aides testify, Hope Hicks, etc., before Congress, Congressional committee. The Trump White House is so far resisting. It could come down to a judicial order, whether he will actually order his aides to turn over evidence. This is where we're heading. Kina, do you support right now an impeachment process, a procedure to have an impeachment vote and essentially put the president on trial?
Absolutely. Absolutely. His administration has had a complete lack of regard for the Constitution, for the checks and balances in the Constitution. He has implemented unconstitutional executive orders like the Muslim ban, supporting things like these abortion bans that are happening across the states, which we know is unconstitutional because of Roe v. Wade. We have seen a full-on attack. This is someone who has called neo-Nazis, who marched through the streets of Charlottesville and said, Jews will not replace us, very fine people, and murdered somebody. There's a plethora of things, right? And all personal feelings to the side, let's just talk about the nitty gritty. The investigation or the report that was released has not only been compromised by the current U.S. Attorney General, but we know that there has been insinuation that, there are charges in that filing and in that report that warrants investigation, articles of impeachment, and a trial that needs to take place. My frustration comes when we have leadership in the Democratic Party, right? Because we know where the GOP stands on this. When we have representation in the Democratic Party that are using excuses like the polling doesn't show that Americans want the president impeached. Number one, we know that polls change. The natures of polls change. And as a matter of fact, if we go back to Richard Nixon, when they were beginning the impeachment process for him, he had a 65% approval rating in the country, and only 19% of the country wanted impeachment charges on him. By the end of the trial, the numbers had flipped, and he had a 25% approval rating, and over 57% of Americans agreed that he needed to be impeached.
So what's your sense of what the attitude is in the 7th Congressional? Do you think people are paying attention? Do you think people care about this issue? Do you think they would support an impeachment? How important of an issue do you think this is in the 7th Congressional District? So
our district is a true blue district. We are a D plus 38. We're extremely progressive. So we know just, off those basic
D
facts.
Plus 38 means that the Democrat gets 38% points. Well,
meaning
that's
that
a Democratic district.
We're the bluest in Illinois. in all of Illinois. We are, I think, number 4 in the country.
Wow, you bluer than the first?
Yeah, we're bluer than the first district.
Wow.
We're bluer than the first.
You can't be bluer than this room. This is the bluest room. Did anybody in this room ever vote a Republican?
But, I mean, even with that, every blue won't do, Ben, because look at what's happening. We are not, this is about the morality of our country. Like, forget if you think the polling says what's right and what's wrong. He has exhibited egregious behaviors and attacks, not only against our congressional leaders, but he has aligned himself with folks who are enemies to the United States of America and alienated our allies. So this is a fiscal issue. This is a social issue. It's a political issue, and it needs to be a moral issue.
All right. I think there's no denying that if Kina Collins was in Washington right now, vote for impeachment. All right.
I'd have the banner.
The vote for impeachment. And one more time, thank you very much, Kina, for coming in. I appreciate it. And Kina, once again, is running for Congress in the 7th Congressional District. We had Anthony Clark on yesterday. Danny K. Davis, we're going to reach out to him as well. I think it's really important that a district that is as blue as the one that Kina is running in, as she just stated, really have the most progressive candidates in the world, because you're not going to get punished for taking progressive views or liberal views, whatever you call them, in the 7th. Maybe Lauren Underwood could say, well, I got to, walk a fine line because I'm in a purple district. But whoever is the congressperson or congresswoman, congressman from the 7th has no excuse. So, Kina Collins, thank you very much for stopping in. Also want to thank the great Jim Coogan and Monroe Anderson. That was a blast talking to them about Trump. And Trump, Leah did a great job, as she does every day with her interviews. She's fantastic. She's the pride and joy of the city of Chicago. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend behind the boards from Alton, Illinois. You know what they call him down in Alton, Illinois, Kina Collins? They call him White Lightning. Oh, yeah.
No, they don't. No one's ever called me that in my life.
Anyway, Dr. D, give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, chicago.suntimes.com/Joravsky. I think it's now chicago.suntimes.com/pages/Joravsky. I don't know what happened there. And chicagoreader.com or wherever else you download your favorite podcasts. Find us on social media at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, and the Ben Joravsky Show on Instagram. And Ben will probably reply to you in like a week or something. See you tomorrow.
All right, tell me my Instagram. Not as good as you on Twitter.